Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Chapter 16. Pursuit, Canyon of the Dead. The physical attributes of elite skeleton swordsmen far exceed skeleton soldiers and advanced skeletons, and they are even better than skeleton warriors. Although it has no armor on its body, the gradually thickened bones are faintly closed, which also provides it with strong defense capabilities. Facing the attacks of countless skeleton soldiers, the elite skeleton swordsman did not dodge or evade. Those different kinds of skeleton weapons hit the elite skeleton swordsman, leaving only slight scratches on this strong skeleton body. But this is just for those normal skeleton soldiers. When the rain of dozens of arrows hit, small gaps began to appear on this strong skeleton body. When those bone arrows hit the eye sockets, even the elite skeleton swordsman had to swing the sword to block. And the fireball. The strong skeleton provides the elite skeleton swordsman with great physical defense, but not magic defense. When the two blue fireballs exploded on the body, a scorched trace appeared on the skeletal body of the elite skeleton swordsman. There are faint cracks centered on the scorched marks, spreading in other directions. In Su-Emu's field of vision, a salvo of these two fireballs blew away a full tenth of this elite skeleton swordsman's health. It is no wonder that when the elite skeleton swordsman broke into the sea of skeletons, the skeleton warrior remained motionless. If the skeleton brothers under his command are only skeleton soldiers and skeleton warriors, I am afraid this war will end with the beheading of skeleton warriors by elite skeleton swordsmen. But when the corps under the skeleton general is complete enough, the elite skeleton swordsman is difficult to be his opponent. Outside the battlefield, the soul fire in Su-Emu's eyes flickered slightly. Skeleton warriors, he has, and there are as many as 39. Skeleton archers, he also has, but only 4. The rest are skeleton assassins and skeleton guards. Skeleton mage. It has been more than 10 days since he was reborn. He'd never even seen the shadow of a skeleton mage once, let alone enslave a skeleton mage, or get a job template for it. Have to say, a single skeleton mage poses little threat to Su-Emu. But when the skeleton mage appears in the skeleton sea and can output without any burden, its value will increase tenfold. Even Su-Emu may not be much better than this elite skeleton swordsman. Skeleton, skeleton soldier, skeleton warrior, skeleton warlord, skeleton commander, skeleton king. It makes sense for this advancement path to become the orthodox advancement path for the skeleton clan. Even an elite-ranked skeleton warlord has casters like the skeleton mage. It is conceivable how many skeletons of other professions will gather around the skeleton commander and the skeleton king. The advanced road of the skeleton family is never easy. While Su-Emu was deep in thought, the battle on the battlefield was also in a state of intense heat. After being bombarded by 3 waves of arrow rain and 2 waves of fireballs, the elite skeleton swordsman finally rushed to the vicinity of the skeleton warrior. It jumped, spanning a distance of several meters. When he was about to reach the top of the skeleton warlord, he released, sky-splitting, for the second time. But at this moment, the skeleton guard who had been standing beside the skeleton general rushed out. Holding a thick tower shield condensed from the essence of bones, this skeleton guard, who is only an advanced professional, blocked the powerful light blade. The tower shield is broken. The shattered bones of the skeleton guard splashed around, and only the still intact skeletons fell to the ground. The skeleton warrior was unscathed. Taking advantage of the gap between the elite skeleton swordsman's release of skills, the dozens of skeleton soldiers once again attacked a wave of arrows here, and the hands of the 2 skeleton mages also burned with blue fireballs again. Even the skeleton warrior himself, waving his 2-handed warhammer, attacked the elite skeleton swordsman. Boom! Arrow rain. Fireball. 2-handed warhammer. The triple attack landed on his body, and the HP of the elite skeleton swordsman suddenly dropped to only 1/5. Hunt failed. The elite skeleton swordsman who felt the crisis released the last, cracking slash, and after emptying the many skeleton soldiers around them, they fled outside the battlefield. After paying the price of 1/10 of the blood, the elite skeleton swordsman successfully escaped from the battlefield. The arrow rain never stopped. The skeleton soldiers have also been chasing. But with a lot of agile growth, even the elite skeleton warriors can hardly catch up with the elite skeleton swordsmen, let alone those who only have basic rank. In just a few short breaths, the elite skeleton warriors who left the battlefield disappeared into the wilderness in the distance. A brief stagnation. After the figure of the elite skeleton swordsman completely disappeared, the skeleton warrior gave the order again to rectify the skeleton younger brother under his command, and disappeared into the dim sky from another direction. From beginning to end, neither side found Su Mu hiding outside the battlefield. Click, click. Coming out of the hiding place, Su Mu glanced at the direction in which the sea of skeletons disappeared, and turned to chase after the elite skeleton swordsman with his little skeleton brother. Skeleton Warlord's sea of skeletons lost a little, but not much. In particular, the two skeleton mages who are casters still retain their full combat effectiveness. It is undoubtedly unwise to pursue the skeleton warlord at this time. On the contrary, the elite skeleton swordsman only has 1/10 of its health remaining, and it will take a long time to fully recover. As long as he can catch up, it means that he can pay a very small price to kill or enslave this elite skeleton. Comparing the two, naturally the latter is more attractive to Su Mu. Besides, the class template owned by the elite skeleton swordsman, but one of the necessities for Su Mu to change classes again. Along the way, I did not encounter other elite skeletons. Following the traces left by the elite skeleton swordsman, they continued to pursue until more than an hour later, Su Mu left this hilly area with his skeleton brother and turned into a canyon. You discovered the Canyon of the Dead. You entered the Canyon of the Dead. Chapter 17. Enter the canyon from the hills. Su Mu obviously felt a slight change in the surrounding aura. As if the breath of death that pervades this canyon is purer and softer. Moreover, there seems to be an invisible barrier that separates this canyon from the outside world. The breath refreshed on the attribute panel also showed that this canyon was indeed separated from the bone burial ground. Death Canyon. Entering the canyon, Su Mu looked forward. This canyon is not very big. The length is about 2 or 3 kilometers, and the width is only 200 or 300 meters. Standing at the entrance of the canyon, he could see countless figures wandering in this canyon. At the end of the field of vision, there is a blurred building surrounded by many figures. Is this the domain of that elite skeleton swordsman, or? After thinking quietly for a while, Su Mu tried his best to lighten his steps, took his skeleton brother to hide his figure, and walked towards the interior of the canyon. The traces left by the elite skeleton swordsman extend all the way to the depths of the canyon. His location is the only exit of this canyon. No matter what is hidden in this canyon, as long as he clears this canyon, he will naturally be able to find the hidden elite skeleton swordsman. Speed up your steps. When Su Mu was tens of meters deep into the canyon, he finally saw clearly what those figures were wandering in the canyon. Not a skeleton, but another undead race. To be precise, it is the undead race that Su Mu has only heard of in his previous life, but has never seen with his own eyes, zombies. Compared with skeletons, zombies have flesh and blood. Nature. This kind of flesh and blood is not the flesh and blood of living beings that is full of vitality, but dry and stiff, like a stone. The advantage is that with such flesh and blood, the physical defense capability of the zombie family is far greater than that of the skeleton family, and its physique growth length is also far higher than that of the skeleton. The downside is that it's slow. Even elite rank zombies may not be as fast as basic rank skeleton soldiers. In terms of attributes, the zombies are similar to a race of undead whose whole people are meat shields. A meat shield race. Su Mu has a bottom in his heart. No matter how many zombies exist in this Valley of the Dead, and whether there are high-level existences among these zombies, the disadvantage of speed alone makes it difficult for these zombies to pose a threat to him. If you can't fight, you can run. A little bit of grinding, sooner or later, he will clean up all the zombies in this canyon. Mind a move. The other skeleton brothers under Su Mu's command did not move, only a skeleton archer pulled a bow and an arrow, and a pale bone arrow penetrated a space of dozens of meters and was nailed to the shoulder of a zombie. Roar. With a low and hoarse roar, the zombie raised its head and looked around blankly. Then at a slow speed, he instinctively walked towards the direction of the bone arrow. The other zombies around it, just a little restless, and soon returned to that kind of aimless wandering. Zombies are getting closer. When the zombie that was brought out was only 10 meters away from Su Mu, but more than 50 meters away from the small group of zombies, Su Mu ordered again. The two skeleton warriors appeared more and more, approaching several times faster than this zombie. Then, The bone knife and bone sword slid across quickly, and the zombie had its limbs cut off without any resistance and fell to the ground. At this time, Su Mu stepped forward and covered the forehead of this zombie who had no other movement except roaring with his own bone palm. Erosion talent activated. The best way to understand the zombies is to enslave them. As long as it can be enslaved, Su Mu can view all information about this zombie at any time, including the attribute panel, as well as its occupation and growth. However, boom. Just when Su Mu felt that he was about to enslave the zombie, the head of the zombie burst open without warning. Black slurry splatters. Exudes a strong stench. This zombie, who was still roaring in a low voice a few seconds ago, is only half of its body left. Unable to enslave. Still, at this time, Su Mu's attribute panel also refreshed several pieces of information in a timely manner. Slavery failed. You killed the living corpse. You gain 3 experience points. You have obtained the transfer information of the basic profession template, living corpse. The basic occupation of the zombie family is called a living corpse. With this in mind, Su Mu opened the information about this basic occupation template. Open black lens bracket template, close black lens bracket, living corpse. Rank basic occupation template. Bonus, health plus 80, strength 1.5, agility 0.3, constitution 3. Ability, rigid flesh and blood. Frozen flesh. As a living corpse, each zombie can absorb the breath of death to rigidify its own flesh, preventing it from decaying and enhancing its defense capabilities. The attribute bonus is similar to that of the skeleton soldier, but it is more focused on physique. As the basic job template of the zombie family, the profession of living corpse is naturally only available to the zombie family. Even if he gets this job template, Su Mu can't change jobs. Zombie. Living corpse. Looking at the basic occupation template of the zombie family, Su Mu also has a basic understanding of this species. But he still didn't know whether the failure of enslavement was due to the limitations of the erosion talent, or there were other reasons. If the erosion talent can only enslave the skeleton family, its usefulness will undoubtedly be greatly reduced. After a little thought, Su Mu no longer hesitated. As soon as he waved his hand, the 4 skeleton archers pulled their bows and arrows at the same time, and attacked the group of living corpses that were still wandering in the distance. The remaining skeleton boys also acted at the same time, holding various the skeleton weapon rushed forward. Chapter 18. In the face of Su Mu, an existence comparable to an elite skeleton, and his 46 skeleton brothers with advanced occupations, the zombies in the Canyon of the Dead are slightly weaker. Just half an hour. Su Mu took his skeleton brother all the way from the entrance of the Canyon of the Dead to the depths of the Canyon of the Dead. Period. There were hundreds of zombies killed by them, most of them were living corpses, and only a dozen zombies were walking corpses, with advanced job templates. But, in the next dozens of trials, Su Mu still failed to enslave even a single zombie. Fortunately, the first function of the erosion talent has not failed, and he can still absorb the essence from the bodies of these zombies to enhance his 4-dimensional attributes. In addition, he also obtained the advanced occupation template of the zombie family. Open black lens bracket template, close black lens bracket, The Walking Dead. Open black lens bracket rank, close black lens bracket, advanced occupation template. Bonus, HP plus 500, Strength 5, Agility 1, Constitution 8, Spirit 0.1. Skill, Sharp Claw. Claws. Passive skill. Bathed in the breath of death for a long time, these living corpses grow stronger. Their nails turn into sharp claws, helping them tear apart their enemies. Like the living corpse, the attributes of the walking corpse still focus on physique. Its job transfer is still limited to the zombie family. Pushing the front line to the depths of the Canyon of the Dead, the number of zombies in this canyon has been killed by Su Mu by more than half. At the same time, the real face of the building he saw at the entrance of the canyon was also presented in front of Su Mu. This is an altar. The altar is more than 10 meters high and is quadrilateral. The whole body is made of black rocks, occupying a full half of the bottom of the entire canyon. Such an altar is enough to be called tall and majestic. But what attracted Su Mu's attention was not the altar itself, but the countless zombies standing on the steps of this altar. The steps of the altar have 9 levels. Starting from the first floor, the level and rank of zombies continue to increase. Standing on the steps below are just a large number of living corpses. From the 6th floor, the walking corpse appeared. And the higher the number of steps, the higher the level of the walking corpse. Su Mu and his skeleton brother emptied most of the Valley of the Dead, and the number of zombies killed was only a few hundred, the number of zombies standing on this altar, more than 500. If these zombies are standing on the altar, they are accepting some kind of benefit. But in Su Mu's perception, this altar is clearly extracting the breath of death from these zombies and gathering towards the top of the altar. Every zombie that sets foot on the altar is being drawn from the breath of death. For the undead, this can be equivalent to their breath of life. When the breath of death in a zombie is drawn to a certain level, it will fall from the altar. Then, those zombies roaming around the altar began to snatch this position. The location where the breath of death was drawn. It seems that some existence controls these zombies and makes them continue this action according to the will of that existence. The breath of death in the Canyon of the Dead is gentler and purer. Su Mu has verified this. Staying in this canyon for a long time, whether it is him or his skeleton younger brother, can evolve at a faster speed. The same goes for the zombies in Dead Man's Canyon. The breath of death in the Gorge of the Dead is nourishing these zombies. When the level of these zombies and the breath of death in their bodies reach a certain level, they will appear around the altar. When a zombie on the altar falls, these zombies entrenched around the altar will snatch its position and snatch the opportunity to extract the breath of death from the body. So back and forth, like some kind of evil ritual. In this way, the breath of death in the entire Valley of the Dead will be harvested by this ritual-like behavior and converge on a certain existence. This kind of handwriting, but it is definitely not something that can be created by undead, such as skeletons or zombies, who have almost no consciousness. Countless ideas flashed through my mind. After taking his skeleton brother to clear all the zombies around the altar, Su Mu took over the control of a skeleton guard and stepped onto the altar with the body of the skeleton guard and the vision of the skeleton guard. The skeleton guard has the strongest defense, and it lasts the longest in any danger. And Su Mu would not rashly set foot on this altar until the purpose of this altar was found out. Click. Under Su Mu's control, the skeleton guards pushed aside a few zombies and stepped onto the first steps of the altar. Except for the few zombies who were squeezed off the altar, struggling to return to their original positions, the other zombies on the altar did not move at all. It seems like, when all the zombies set foot on the altar, they completely lost their consciousness and self, and fell into a deep sleep. I understand. While controlling the skeleton guard to continue to climb the altar, Su Mu once again ordered other skeleton brothers to climb the altar and hunt down these zombies whose instinct to resist has disappeared layer by layer. Layer. 2 layers. 3 floors. 5 floors. As time goes by, the zombies on the floors below the altar have all been beheaded by the skeleton brothers, and the skeleton guard controlled by Su Mu himself is about to set foot on the top floor of the altar. Same as the beginning. The gigantic altar did not draw the breath of death from the body of the skeleton guard. Step. 2 steps. 3 steps. Soon, when the skeleton guard took the last step, it finally appeared at the top of the altar. And the entire scene above the dark altar also appeared in front of Su Mu's eyes through the vision of the skeleton guard. This is a small square. The ground of more than 100 square meters was engraved with various strange symbols, and these countless symbols converged to form a magic circle covering the entire square. That's not the point. The point is that the entire square is divided into 4 areas. At this time, 4 zombies stronger than the walking corpse were bound in the center of these 4 areas, and in the center of the entire square, a tall zombie exuding an extremely terrifying and ferocious atmosphere was accepting the almost endless death. The nourishment of the breath, and the nurture. Chapter 19. With a roar, the brilliant blade of light spread, the skeleton guard was beheaded, and Su Mu also lost his vision above the altar. He had already seen almost the scene on the altar. Basically no danger. And the skeleton guard was beheaded, but it was because a skeleton. Yes, it was the elite skeleton swordsman who was severely injured and entered the Canyon of the Dead. From Su Mu controlling the skeleton guards to the top of the altar, to seeing the scene above the altar, it was just an instant. It was at this moment that the elite skeleton swordsman who had fled here rushed to the edge of the dark altar and beheaded the skeleton guard with one sword. If he didn't find out the details of the dark altar, Su Mu naturally didn't dare to go forward easily. But what? Since the skeleton guard was able to board the altar unscathed, the elite skeleton swordsman escaped to the altar to heal after being severely injured, which is enough to show that stepping on the altar is not dangerous to Su Mu. Elite skeleton swordsmen, who were originally the target of Su Mu's hunt. The zombies in this canyon and this dark altar are the unexpected gains. That being the case, with a thought, Su Mu ordered the many skeleton brothers under his command who had already reached the 7th or 8th floor of the altar and were about to step onto the altar to abandon the many walking corpses and rush directly to the altar. Su Mu himself jumped up and rushed towards the altar at the fastest speed. Boom, boom, whoa, various voices came. When Su Mu rushed to the altar, his skeleton brothers had already fought against the elite skeleton swordsman. As he guessed, there is a very strong and pure death breath on the altar. Even though most of the death aura was bound by the runes on the altar and circulated back and forth between the 5 zombies, only a part of it spread out, making the death aura on the altar stronger and more refined than other places. Pure. It is no wonder that the elite skeleton swordsman will appear here. It's just that during the time he was chasing, under the nourishment of this rich, pure and gentle death breath, the health of the elite skeleton swordsman has recovered to 1/3. This speed is several times that of the outside world. If Su Mu arrives a few hours later, I am afraid that what he needs to face is an elite skeleton swordsman who has returned to its heyday. Fortunately, he didn't waste too much time on the road. Health is the most direct response to a skeleton's body level. 1/3 of the health value means that this elite skeleton swordsman has recovered a lot, but it is still in a weak state. At a glance, Su Mu could still see the large cracks on the body of this elite skeleton swordsman. If only his own skeleton brother shot, it would be difficult to win this elite skeleton swordsman. Add Su Mu, it's not the same. After rushing to the dark altar, Su Mu took over the control of the skeleton boys. The 2 highest level skeleton warriors and the only remaining skeleton guard stepped forward and blocked the elite skeleton swordsman as meat shields. The 4 skeleton archers stepped back, drawing bows and arrows on the edge of the altar. The only one of the skeleton assassins concealed their figure and quietly touched the back of the elite skeleton swordsman. The remaining skeleton warriors attacked freely, attracting the hatred of the elite skeleton swordsman. In this way, just by simply changing the formation, the combat power of the skeleton boys doubled, and the slaughter efficiency of the elite skeleton swordsman dropped significantly. And Su Mu himself, carrying the skeleton moblade at this time, charged towards the elite skeleton swordsman. Roundabout. Unnecessary. If with the help of so many skeleton brothers, Su Mu can't defeat this elite skeleton swordsman who is already in a weak state, why does he hunt other elite skeletons? Step out. In a few breaths, he rushed to the front of the elite skeleton swordsman. The skeleton sword in Su Mu's hand poured all the strength of his whole body, and brought a sharp edge in midair, towards the elite skeleton sword that was already close at hand. Beheaded. Boom. A violent symphony of gold and iron spread. The skeleton sword was blocked by the elite skeleton swordsman. Only, it blocked the most powerful skeleton moblade, but it couldn't stop the attacks of many other skeletons. The skeleton archers kept pulling their bows and arrows, nailing the pale bone arrows to the elite skeleton swordsman. The weapons in the hands of the skeleton warriors kept gouging, making the cracks on the elite skeleton swordsman bigger and bigger. The slender figure of the assassin emerged from behind the elite skeleton swordsman, and 2 short swords stabbed the elite skeleton swordsman's cervical vertebrae fiercely. In an instant, this elite skeleton swordsman finally recovered to 1/3 of his health, and then plummeted to only about 1/4. Elite skeleton swordsman fury. The 2-handed sword in his hand was raised high, as if he wanted to remove the many ants surrounding him. But, at this time, the second attack of the skeleton moblade has arrived. Compared with the small but continuous attacks of the skeleton brothers, it is obvious that the skeleton sword in Su Mu's hand poses a greater threat to this elite skeleton swordsman. It had to give up on clearing the skeleton boys, holding the sword again and blocking Su Mu's attack. Once, twice, 3 times. With the roar of the skeleton arming handover, the blood volume of the elite skeleton swordsman is getting lower and lower. When Su Mu slashed the skeleton sword in his hand for the 5th time, the elite skeleton swordsman whose health had bottomed out could no longer stop Su Mu's full-strength blow. Whoa! Under the bombardment of tremendous force, the already scarred body of the elite skeleton swordsman could no longer bear it, and it collapsed at this moment. The tall skeleton body fell to the ground, and the skeleton sword in its hand also fell to the ground at this moment. Ended. Under the combined attack of Su-mu and many skeleton brothers, this elite skeleton swordsman only lasted for more than a minute before falling to the ground. Without hesitation, Su-mu stepped forward and grabbed the gigantic skull of the elite skeleton swordsman in his hand. The erosion talent was activated immediately, and he began to enslave the elite skeleton. You have gained control of an elite skeleton swordsman. You enslaved the elite skeleton swordsman. You can rename elite skeleton swordsman. You have obtained the transfer information of the Elite Profession Template Elite Skeleton Swordsman. Chapter 20. Elite Skeleton Swordsman. This is the career template that Su-mu has just obtained, and it is also one of the transfer directions of the Advanced Professional Skeleton Swordsman he owns at the elite level. Only, Elite Skeleton Swordsman has always been Su-mu's name for this elite skeleton who has just been enslaved by him. He did not expect that the professional template of this elite skeleton is actually called Elite Skeleton Swordsman. From the advanced level to the elite level, the skeleton swordsman still has several advanced directions. For example, Elite Skeleton Swordsman is an enhancement to Skeleton Swordsman. Except for the higher life bonus and the growth rate of 4D attributes, the development direction of the Elite Skeleton Swordsman is the same as that of the Skeleton Swordsman. In addition, there are many different advanced directions that are more inclined to speed, more inclined to damage, and more inclined to defense. In general, the Elite Skeleton Swordsman class is all about balance. I can't say how good it is, but it is not bad. It is the orthodox advancement direction of the Skeleton Swordsman profession. But the career template was in hand, and the four-dimensional attributes had already met the requirements for career change, but Su-mu was not in a hurry to start changing careers. He looked towards the altar. From beginning to end, there was no movement on the altar. Whether they set foot on this altar or engaged in a short but fierce battle on this altar, the 5 tall zombies on the altar did not move and remained asleep. At this moment, Su-mu had time to examine the 5 zombies on the altar carefully. It is clear. The 4 tall zombies located in the center of the 4 areas of the altar are the elite occupation of the zombie family. At this time, there are still dozens of walking corpses that have not been beheaded on the steps of the altar, and this dark altar is also continuing to extract the breath of death from the corpses and pour it into the bodies of these 4 elite zombies. The infusion of the breath of death did not make the 4 elite zombies so powerful. Quite the opposite. In Su-mu's perception, not only did these 4 elite zombies not become stronger, they were incomparably weak. The breath of death emanating from them is at best a bit stronger than the walking corpse. Nowhere near what elite zombies should be. As for the reason, the breath of death in the hundreds of living corpses and corpses was extracted by the dark altar and poured into the bodies of these 4 elite zombies. At the same time, the aura of death in the bodies of these 4 elite zombies is also being extracted by the dark altar. As if living corpses and walking corpses are the providers of the breath of death, and these 4 elite zombies are the filters and purifiers of the breath of death. The purest breath of death filtered and purified, all poured into the center of the dark altar. That extremely terrifying and ferocious tall zombie inside. It can be said, the zombies in the entire Valley of the Dead are all harvested leaks, and only the fierce zombie at the center of the dark altar is the only beneficiary. Fierce zombies are still elite. But the terrifying aura it exudes far exceeds that of any elite monster that Su-mu has ever seen. With the breath of death and thousands of zombies in the entire Valley of the Dead, to breed an elite zombie. This is, prepare to let it break through the elite rank, the advanced warrior rank. Messages flashed through his mind, and Su-mu had an answer in his heart. He is no match for this zombie. Even if this zombie has not yet entered the warrior rank, I am afraid it is not far behind. If this zombie wakes up, I'm afraid one blow will be enough to kill Su-mu. He didn't want to leave just like that. 4 weak elite zombies, plus a fierce zombie that is about to break through to the warrior rank. This is not only a huge amount of experience points, but also a large number of attribute points. Enough for him to work hard for a long time. However, the danger is also visible at a glance. From the beginning to the present, neither the elite skeleton swordsman nor Su-mu have touched the 5 elite zombies on the altar. Even if Su-mu had his skeleton brother slaughter almost the living corpses and walking corpses on the steps of the altar, there were still dozens of walking corpses left to keep the altar running. If you touch these zombies, or interrupt the operation of the altar, I'm afraid these 5 elite zombies will wake up at the same time. At that time, he will face the most dangerous situation since his rebirth. Do you want to take risks? The soul fire in his eyes flickered slightly, and Sumu looked at the 5 elite zombies again. The dark altar is still running, drawing the breath of death from the body of the walking corpse. Hundreds of other zombies were lost, and only a few dozen walking corpses were left, unable to withstand the continuous extraction of the dark altar, and were already crumbling. The decrease in the number of death breaths also alarmed the 5 elite zombies. Sumu even saw that the body of the fierce zombie in the center of the altar moved slightly, as if it would wake up from its deep sleep at any time. Time is running out. After thinking for a while, Sumu ordered his skeleton brothers to separate and surrounded the 4 weak elite zombies, while he rushed to the front of the fierce zombies with a few skeleton warriors. As for elite skeleton swordsmen, wounded one after another, the skeletal body of this elite skeleton swordsman was shattered when he was enslaved by Sumu. It won't do much until the body is repaired or replaced with a new one. As expected of an existence on the verge of breaking through to the rank of warriors. Just standing in front of the fierce zombie, Sumu felt a great sense of crisis. This fierce zombie is like a terrifying beast that will wake up at any time. A black crystal ball is suspended above the fierce zombie. If the living corpse and the walking corpse are the first layer of filtering the breath of death, and the 4 weak elite zombies are the second layer of filtering the breath of death, this crystal ball is the last layer of filtering the breath of death. All the breath of death gathered in this crystal ball, and then poured into the body of the fierce zombie through this crystal ball to nourish it. Obviously, this black crystal ball is the center of the entire altar. Did not dare to touch the crystal ball. After reaching the fierce zombie's side, Sumu gently stretched out his fleshless bone palm, covering the fierce zombie's forehead. Erosion Talent. Start up. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.